My name is Eli Morgan, and right now I'm standing at my apartment door. But I'm not going inside, because outside my boss Caden Pierce is waiting. And his mother is with him. Yes, you heard that right. The same man who humiliated me yesterday in front of the entire cafeteria, saying, "You're incompetent, Morgan. Pack your things," is now standing at my doorstep, to apologize. But I don't want to hear it. I crack the door open just enough to see them through the gap. Caden looks terrible. His usually perfectly styled brown hair is messy, and there are dark circles under his eyes like he hasn't slept in days. His mother, an elegant woman in her 50s wearing a cream-colored coat, looks at me with concerned eyes and says, "Son, please just listen for a moment." I shake my head slowly. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I have nothing to say to you or to him." And I close the door, right in their faces. I hear his mother say something muffled through the wood, but I don't care. I walk away from the door and sink down onto my living room floor, my back against the couch. My hands are shaking, not from anger alone, though there's plenty of that burning in my chest. No, it's something else. Something I've tried to bury for years. The truth is, I don't just hate Caden Pierce right now. I'm also still connected to him in a way I wish I wasn't. 4 years ago, we were in college together. We weren't just classmates. We were friends. Maybe even more than friends, though we never put a name to it. We spent late nights in the library, shared coffee during breaks, and there were moments when our hands would brush and neither of us would pull away. Moments when he'd look at me with those intense gray eyes and I'd forget how to breathe. Then one day, without warning, he cut me off completely, blocked my number, avoided me on campus, treated me like I was invisible, like I was some kind of disease he needed to stay away from. I never understood why. I spent months trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, replaying every conversation, every laugh, every shared silence. But there were no answers, just emptiness. When I graduated and started job hunting 2 years later, I told myself I was over it. Over him. When I saw the opening at Pierce Industries, I thought about skipping it, but it was a good position, great benefits, and I needed to move forward with my life. I never expected him to be there. I definitely didn't expect him to recognize me during the interview, but he did. His face went pale when I walked into that conference room. For a split second, something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe even pain. Then it was gone, replaced by cold professionalism. He barely spoke to me during the interview. It was his HR director who asked most of the questions. I got the job anyway because my credentials were solid. The past 3 months working under him have been hell. He's been distant, cold, and critical of everything I do. Every report I submit comes back with red marks. Every presentation I give gets torn apart in front of the team. I kept telling myself it was just his management style, that I was being paranoid, but yesterday proved me wrong. We were in the company cafeteria. I just finished a major project, a marketing strategy that took me weeks to develop. I was exhausted but proud. I saw Caden walk in with some executives, and foolishly I approached him to ask if he'd reviewed my proposal. He looked at me like I was an insect. Then in front of everyone, the executives, my colleagues, even the cafeteria staff, he said those words. "You're incompetent, Morgan. Pack your things." The entire room went silent. I felt my face burn with humiliation. Someone dropped a tray in the kitchen and the clatter echoed through the silence. I wanted to say something to defend myself, but my throat closed up. I just nodded and walked out, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall until I was alone. I spent last night crying in my apartment, something I haven't done in years. I cried for the job I lost. Yes. But more than that, I cried for that stupid, naive part of me that still wondered what could have been, that still remembered how it felt when Caden smiled at me in college, back when he was different, back when he was almost kind. Now he's here, at my door, with his mother. What does he want from me? An apology won't give me back my job. It won't undo the humiliation. It won't erase the 4 years of confusion and pain. I hear footsteps outside my door. They're leaving. Good. I stand up and walk to my kitchen, trying to focus on something normal. Make coffee, check my email, start looking for new jobs. Anything to distract myself from the ache in my chest that feels suspiciously like grief. But as I'm filling the kettle with water, I hear it, a soft thud against my door. Then another. Not knocking. Something else. I walk back to the entrance and look through the peephole. Caden is sitting on the floor outside my apartment, his back against my door, his head in his hands. His mother is gone. He's alone. Part of me wants to open the door. Part of me wants to demand answers for everything. For college, for the job, for yesterday. But I don't. Instead, I press my palm against the door, knowing he's just on the other side, separated by a few inches of wood and 4 years of silence. Why now? I whisper, knowing he can't hear me. Why come here now? I stay there for what feels like hours but is probably only minutes. Finally, I hear him stand up. I hear his footsteps walking away, getting fainter. I should feel relief. I should feel vindicated. But all I feel is empty. I go back to the kitchen and make my coffee. The apartment feels too quiet, too still. I sit at my small dining table and stare at my laptop screen without really seeing it. My phone buzzes. A text from my friend Marcus asking if I'm okay. Word travels fast. Everyone probably knows by now that I got fired. I don't reply. I don't know what to say. How do you explain that your boss fired you in the most public, humiliating way possible? How do you explain that the same boss was once someone you cared about, someone who meant something to you before he became a stranger? I finish my coffee and set the cup down. Tomorrow I'll start job hunting. Tomorrow I'll pick up the pieces and move forward. But tonight I let myself sit in this feeling, this strange mixture of anger and sadness and something I can't quite name. Because despite everything, despite the humiliation and the pain, there's a small part of me that wonders what Caden would have said if I'd opened that door. And I hate myself a little bit for wondering. The sound wakes me from a restless sleep. Tap, tap, tap. At first I think it's rain, but the rhythm is too irregular, too deliberate. I roll over and try to ignore it, but it continues. Tap, tap, tap. Finally, irritated and exhausted, I throw off my blanket and stumble to the window. When I pull back the curtain, my heart stops. 3 floors below, in the dim glow of the streetlight, Caden Pierce is standing in my apartment building's courtyard. He's wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, looking nothing like the polished executive I'm used to seeing. He's holding a handful of small pebbles, and when he sees me at the window, he drops them. I yank the window open. "What are you doing? Are you insane?" His voice carries up to me, rough and desperate. "Eli, please, just 5 minutes. I won't leave until you come down. It's 3 in the morning. You're going to wake up the entire building. Then come down before that happens." I want to slam the window shut. I want to call the police. But I can see Mrs. Chen's light flick on in the apartment next to mine. And Mr. Rodriguez is probably already reaching for his phone. The last thing I need is to explain this situation to my neighbors or have cops show up. Cursing under my breath, I grab a jacket and head downstairs. When I push open the building's front door, the cold night air hits me. Caden is standing a few feet away, his hands shoved in his hoodie pocket. Up close, he looks even worse than he did this afternoon. His eyes are bloodshot, his face pale and drawn. Inside, I hiss, grabbing his arm and pulling him into the small lobby. "Before someone sees you and calls the police." We stand in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the lobby, by the row of metal mailboxes. This place is shabby, faded linoleum floors, flickering lights, a bulletin board covered in old notices. It's nothing like the sleek office building where I used to work. The contrast between this space and Caden's usual environment is almost comical. "Talk," I say, crossing my arms. "You have 5 minutes. Then I'm going back to bed, and if you ever show up here again, I will call the cops." He runs a hand through his hair, making it stick up at odd angles. "I need you to know what happened yesterday was wrong. Completely wrong." "Oh, really? You think publicly humiliating someone and destroying their career might be wrong? What gave you that idea?" He flinches. "I deserve that. I deserve worse. But there's more to it than you know." "Then explain." "You've had years to explain, Caden. Years to tell me why you suddenly disappeared from my life in college. Years to treat me like a human being instead of garbage." Something flashes across his face. Pain maybe, or shame. "College," he says quietly. "You want to know about college? Obviously. One day we were studying together, grabbing dinner, talking about everything. The next day you blocked my number and wouldn't even look at me in the hallway. What did I do? Nothing. The word comes out too loud, echoing in the small space. He lowers his voice. You didn't do anything wrong, Eli. It was me. All me. That's not an answer. He takes a deep breath, and when he speaks again, his voice is strained. My father found out we were spending time together. A lot of time. He saw us once, leaving the library late at night. You were laughing at something I said, and I was looking at you the way I shouldn't have been looking at a friend. My stomach twists. What are you saying? He called me into his office that night, told me that I needed to focus on my future, on the family business, told me that certain relationships would be problematic for my career and reputation. He said I needed to cut ties with anyone who might become a distraction or liability. A liability, I repeat, my voice flat. I was a liability. To him, yes. He made it very clear what would happen if I didn't comply. He threatened to cut me off completely, to make sure I couldn't finish my degree. And he stops, his jaw clenching. I was weak. I chose his approval over everything else. Over you. The words hang between us. Part of me wants to feel vindicated, to finally have an explanation after all these years. But mostly I just feel hollow. So you abandoned me because Daddy told you to, I say. And then what? You grew up, took over part of the company, and decided to make my life miserable when I showed up for a job interview. No. God. No. When you walked into that interview, I panicked. All those feelings I'd buried came rushing back. You looked different, more confident, more put together, but you were still you, still the person who made me laugh, who challenged me, who made me feel like I could be something other than Roger Pierce's son. You have a funny way of showing affection, I say bitterly. 3 months of constant criticism and impossible standards, because I was trying to push you away again. If I could make you hate me, make you want to leave, then I wouldn't have to deal with the fact that I never stopped. He cuts himself off abruptly. Never stopped what? He looks away, his throat working. Never stopped wanting things I can't have. The admission hangs in the air between us. I should say something, but I don't know what. My emotions are too tangled: anger, hurt, and something else I don't want to name. Why fire me? I finally ask. If you were trying to push me away, you succeeded. I was already looking for other jobs. You didn't need to humiliate me in public. His face crumples slightly. I was coming back from a meeting with board members. They were talking about acquisition targets, profit margins, all the things my father cared about, and I realized I was turning into him. Cold, calculating, pushing away anything that made me feel human. When I saw you in the cafeteria, you were smiling at your phone. You looked happy, and I thought if I cut you loose completely, you'd be better off. Away from me, away from this company, away from all of it. That wasn't your choice to make. I know, and I'm sorrier than I can possibly express. But there's something else you need to understand. He pulls out his phone, taps the screen a few times, and shows it to me. It's a medical report dated yesterday, just hours after he fired me. Emergency room admission. Diagnosis: acute panic attack with hypertensive crisis. I stare at the screen, then at him. You went to the hospital. 2 hours after I fired you, I collapsed in my office. They had to call an ambulance. The doctors said if I'd waited any longer, I could have had a stroke. His voice is hollow. Turns out you can't spend years suppressing everything you feel and expect your body not to rebel eventually. I don't know what to say. This is too much, too fast. The next morning, I leave my apartment to grab groceries. I didn't sleep after Caden left, just lay in bed replaying our conversation, trying to make sense of everything he'd said. The medical report kept flashing through my mind. Part of me wondered if it was real or some elaborate manipulation tactic. I'm halfway to the corner store when I see her. Helena Pierce, standing by a sleek black car parked at the curb. She's wearing designer sunglasses despite the overcast weather, and she's clearly been waiting for me. Eli, she calls out, walking toward me with surprising grace in her heels. Please, can we talk? Just the two of us? Every instinct tells me to refuse, but there's something about her expression, not demanding or entitled, just quietly persistent, that makes me hesitate. There's a cafe 2 blocks from here, I hear myself saying. We walk in silence. The cafe is one of those trendy places with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. Helena orders a cappuccino. I get black coffee because it's cheaper and I need to start watching my budget now that I'm unemployed. We sit in a corner booth away from the handful of other customers. Helena removes her sunglasses, and I'm struck by how tired she looks. There are fine lines around her eyes that expensive makeup can't quite hide. "Thank you for giving me this chance," she begins. "I'm not sure why I should listen to anything related to your son, Mrs. Pierce." "Helena, please. And you should listen, because there are things Caden won't tell you. Things he's too ashamed to admit." I sip my coffee and wait. She takes a breath, seeming to gather her thoughts. "My husband Roger died 5 weeks ago." I nearly dropped my cup. "What? Cancer?" He kept it private, didn't want the business world to know until absolutely necessary. Caden had to watch him deteriorate while simultaneously taking over more company responsibilities. Her voice is steady but her hands tremble slightly around her cup. Roger was not an easy man. He built that company from nothing and he had very specific ideas about how things should be done. How people should behave. Who was acceptable and who wasn't. Caden told me his father made him cut contact with me in college. Helena nods slowly. Roger found a photo on Caden's laptop. You and Caden at some campus event. You were both laughing and Caden's hand was on your shoulder. It was innocent, but Roger saw something else. He called it a phase. A distraction. He told Caden that if he wanted to inherit any part of the company he needed to focus on appropriate relationships. Appropriate, I echo bitterly. Roger came from a different generation with different values. I don't excuse it, but I'm trying to help you understand the pressure Caden was under. He was 20 years old and terrified of disappointing his father, so he disappointed me instead. Yes. And it's haunted him ever since. Helena reaches into her purse and pulls out a small photograph. She slides it across the table. It's old, printed on actual photo paper like people used to do before everything went digital. In the image, Caden and I are sitting on a bench outside the campus library. It must have been taken by a friend passing by. Caden is looking at something on my laptop screen, but I'm looking at him with an expression that's painfully obvious even years later. I'm smiling, but it's more than that. There's softness in my face, openness, the kind of look you give someone when you don't know you're being watched. He's kept this in his wallet for 4 years, Helena says quietly, through his father's illness, through business meetings, through everything. Some nights I'd find him just staring at it. My throat tightens. I push the photo back toward her, unable to look at it anymore. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because yesterday after he fired you, he called me from the hospital. He was crying so hard I could barely understand him. He kept saying he'd destroyed the only real thing in his life. That he'd become exactly what his father wanted him to be. Cold, ruthless, alone." She pauses, her own eyes glistening. I've never heard my son sound so broken. I stare down at my coffee, watching the dark liquid ripple slightly from the tremor in my hand. "I appreciate you sharing this, Helena. I do. But your son is an adult who made his own choices. He chose to abandon me in college. He chose to treat me terribly at work. He chose to fire me publicly. At some point the excuses stop mattering." "You're absolutely right," she says, surprising me. Caden needs to take full responsibility for his actions. But I'm not here to make excuses for him. I'm here because I need you to understand something about yesterday. She pulls out another envelope. This one looks official with the Pierce Industries logo embossed on it. She pushes it across the table. "Don't open it yet. Just listen first. When Caden fired you yesterday, he wasn't thinking clearly. The board had been pressuring him all week to cut department budgets and lay people off. His father had just been buried 3 weeks prior. He was running on no sleep and had stopped eating properly. He saw you in that cafeteria looking happy and healthy, and something in him just snapped. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. But it's context. And this," she taps the envelope, "is an official reinstatement letter. Full back pay, a formal apology on your record, and a promotion to senior analyst with a 20% salary increase. Caden drafted it himself at 4 in the morning from his hospital bed." I stare at the envelope like it might bite me. I don't want his guilt money. It's not guilt money. It's recognition that you were one of the best employees in that department and firing you was both cruel and stupid. Helena leans forward. Eli, I'm not asking you to forgive my son. I'm not even asking you to take the job back. But I am asking you to read what he wrote inside that envelope. Then make your decision based on all the information, not just the pain. We sit in silence for a long moment. The cafe's espresso machine hisses in the background. Someone's phone rings and gets quickly silenced. Finally, I pick up the envelope. It's heavier than it should be, more than just a single letter inside. Thank you for the coffee, Helena says, standing. She puts her sunglasses back on, and just like that, she's the polished executive's wife again. But before she leaves, she touches my shoulder lightly. Whatever you decide, I hope you find peace. You seem like a good person. You deserved better than what my family put you through. After she's gone, I sit there for another 20 minutes. The envelope burning a hole in my hands. Finally, when the cafe starts getting crowded with the lunch rush, I carefully open it. Inside is the official letter she mentioned, typed on company letterhead with legal language about reinstatement and compensation. But there's also something else. Several pages of handwritten text on plain paper. Caden's handwriting, messy and uneven, like he wrote it quickly or emotionally. The letter starts simply, Eli, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even deserve your time reading this. I don't read the letter at the cafe. The space feels too public, too exposed for whatever's written on these pages. Instead, I walk back to my apartment, the envelope clutched in my hand like it might disappear if I loosen my grip. The walk takes 15 minutes, but it feels longer. Every step is weighted with anticipation and dread. Once inside, I lock the door behind me and sit on my couch. The afternoon light streams through my window, illuminating dust particles floating in the air. I take a deep breath and unfold the pages. Caden's handwriting is terrible, rushed and uneven, letters bleeding into each other like he wrote this in a single sitting without stopping. Some words are smudged, and I realize with a jolt that those might be tear stains. Eli, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even deserve your time reading this. But I need you to know that firing you had nothing to do with your work. Your project proposals were brilliant. Your presentations were flawless. You were the best analyst on that team, and everyone knew it except you because I made sure you never heard the praise. I fired you because I was terrified. Every single morning when you walked into that office, I saw the person I fell in love with in college. The one who made terrible jokes during study sessions. The one who brought me coffee without being asked because you noticed I was stressed. The one who looked at me like I was worth something beyond my last name. I abandoned that person because I was weak. My father told me to cut ties, and I did it without fighting back. I chose his approval over everything that mattered, over you. When he died last month, everyone expected me to feel relieved. Freedom at last. Right? But I just felt hollow, empty. Because the one person I wanted to share my life with, the one person who ever made me feel like I could be myself, was someone I'd already destroyed a relationship with. Twice. The morning I fired you, I'd just come from a meeting where the board was discussing cost-cutting measures. They wanted me to lay off 15 people from various departments. I was supposed to review files and make decisions based on performance metrics and salary brackets. Cold. Calculated. Exactly how my father would have done it. Then I saw you in the cafeteria. You were on your phone smiling at something on the screen. Maybe a text from a friend. Maybe a funny video. I don't know. But you looked genuinely happy, and I realized that in 3 months of working together I'd never seen you smile like that at the office, because I'd made sure the office was miserable for you. I thought if I fired you publicly, brutally, you'd hate me enough to move on completely. You'd find a better job with a better boss who actually appreciated your talents. You'd forget about me and whatever we almost had. You'd be free of the Pierce family mess. Instead, I collapsed 2 hours later in my office. Panic attack. My assistant found me on the floor. Couldn't breathe. Thought I was dying. The hospital said my blood pressure was dangerously high, and if I'd ignored the symptoms any longer, I could have had a stroke at 32 years old. Lying in that emergency room bed, hooked up to monitors, I finally understood. I can't keep running from this. From you. From what I feel. My father is gone, but I'm still living according to his rules. Still making decisions based on his fears instead of my own truth. You deserve someone better than me. Someone who won't hurt you, who won't abandon you when things get difficult, who won't let their father's expectations dictate their choices. But if you can find it in your heart to give me one more chance, I will spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth it. I'm not asking you to come back to the company. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to know that you mattered. You matter. You've always mattered. Whatever you decide, I hope you find happiness. You deserve everything good in this world. Yours, Caden. My hands are shaking by the time I finish reading. I set the pages down on my coffee table and press my palms against my eyes. This is too much information, too many revelations all at once. His father died. Caden was hospitalized. He's been carrying this weight alone while simultaneously trying to push me away from my own good. I pick up my phone and search for news about Roger Pierce. The obituary is easy to find. Major business publications covered it. Renowned CEO Roger Pierce passes away at 68 after brief illness, survived by wife Helena and son Caden Pierce, who will assume full control of Pierce Industries. The funeral was 4 weeks ago, right around the time Caden started becoming even more critical of my work, even more distant. I'd thought he was just being difficult. I didn't know he was grieving. I read the letter 3 more times, memorizing phrases, trying to find hidden meanings or manipulations. But it's raw and honest in a way that's hard to fake. This isn't the polished executive I know. This is someone broken, desperately trying to explain years of choices he regrets. Helena gave me a business card at the cafe. I pull it out of my pocket now and stare at the embossed address. Caden's penthouse is in one of those expensive downtown buildings with doormen and private elevators. A world away from my modest apartment. I should take time to think about this. I should be rational and careful. But something in that letter, the vulnerability, the honesty, the sheer desperation of it, makes me want answers that only Caden can provide. Before I can talk myself out of it, I'm out the door and hailing a taxi. The ride takes 20 minutes through afternoon traffic. I watch the neighborhoods change outside the window, getting progressively more upscale until we're in the financial district where glass towers reflect cloudy sky. The driver pulls up to a sleek building with a modern facade and a uniformed guard at the entrance. I pay the fare and approach the building, suddenly feeling underdressed in my jeans and jacket. But the guard looks up from his tablet as I approach and says, "Mr. Morgan?" I blink in surprise. "Yes. How did you—" "Mr. Pierce left instructions. You're cleared to go up. Penthouse level." He gestures to the elevator bank. Caden was expecting me. Or hoping I'd come. I'm not sure which possibility unsettles me more. The elevator is all mirrors and soft lighting. I watch my reflection as the numbers climb. 12/15/2023. My face looks pale, eyes too wide. I look exactly like someone about to make either the best or worst decision of their life. The elevator opens directly into a private hallway with only one door. Before I can knock, it swings open. Caden stands there and he looks worse than he did at 3 in the morning. He's wearing sweatpants and an old college t-shirt that I vaguely remember from years ago. His hair is messy, his face unshaven, and those dark circles under his eyes are even more pronounced in the daylight. "Eli," he breathes, like he can't quite believe I'm real. I don't say anything. I just look at him, really look at him, and see all the cracks in the armor he usually wears. This isn't the cold boss who fired me. This isn't even the desperate man who threw stones at my window. This is someone stripped down to nothing but vulnerability and hope. "You wrote the letter," I finally say. It's not a question. Every word, he confirms quietly. "From the hospital bed. I needed you to understand. Your father died 4 weeks ago. You had a panic attack. Thought I was dying. We're just stating facts now. Circling around the real conversation we need to have." The hallway feels too exposed, too formal for this. "Can I come in?" I ask. He steps aside immediately and I walk into his penthouse. Caden's penthouse is exactly what I'd expect. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture in shades of gray and white, expensive art on the walls that probably costs more than my yearly rent. But it's also surprisingly messy. There are papers scattered across the dining table, empty coffee cups on various surfaces, a blanket crumpled on the couch like he's been sleeping there instead of in his bedroom. This isn't the pristine show home of a wealthy executive. This is the space of someone barely holding it together. I walk to the windows and look out at the city sprawling below. From this height, everything looks small and manageable. I can see my neighborhood from here, a cluster of older buildings several miles away. I wasn't sure you'd come, Caden says behind me. His voice is rough, uncertain. I turn to face him. I wasn't sure either, but I read your letter 4 times and I needed to hear you say it. All of it. To my face. He nods slowly and moves to sit on the arm of his couch, keeping distance between us, giving me space. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with college. The real story, not the abbreviated version you gave me at 3 in the morning. He runs both hands through his hair, making it stand up even more. We were friends for 8 months. Best friends. Really. You were the only person at that school who didn't care about my last name or my father's company. You challenged me in class discussions, made fun of my terrible taste in music, and somehow always knew when I needed someone to talk to. I remember, I say quietly, I was falling in love with you, slowly, then all at once. But I couldn't admit it, not even to myself. My father had already mapped out my entire life. The right degree, the right career path, the right kind of person to eventually marry. None of that included being in love with my male best friend. The words hang in the air. It's the first time either of us has explicitly named what was growing between us back then. There was this one night, Caden continues, his voice softer now. We'd been studying late at the library. You fell asleep with your head on the table and I just watched you for probably 20 minutes. Thinking about how much I wanted to tell you everything I was feeling, how scared I was of those feelings. What stopped you? My father called the next morning. Said he'd heard from someone that I was spending considerable time with another male student. Wanted to know if there was anything he should be concerned about. I lied and said we were just study partners. But he didn't believe me. Caden stands and walks to the window, standing beside me but not quite close enough to touch. He showed up on campus that weekend, took me to dinner at this expensive restaurant and spent 2 hours explaining very calmly, very rationally, why certain paths would ruin my future. He never raised his voice, never explicitly threatened me, but the message was clear: end the friendship or lose everything. So you chose everything over me. I chose security over uncertainty. I chose my father's approval over my own happiness. And I've regretted it every single day since. He finally looks at me and his eyes are glassy with and tears. I was 20 years old and terrified, Eli. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. I want to stay angry. I want to hold on to the hurt and betrayal. But looking at him now, seeing the genuine remorse and pain in his expression, I feel something shift in my chest. When I saw you at that job interview 2 years later, Caden continues, I nearly walked out of the room. You looked different, more confident, more professional, but you still had that same smile, that same way of tilting your head when you're thinking, and every feeling I'd tried to bury came rushing back. You treated me terribly, because I thought if I kept you at a distance, kept things purely professional and cold, I could control what I felt. If you hated me, you'd eventually leave on your own. You'd find a better opportunity and I wouldn't have to watch you every day wanting something I couldn't have. That's a terrible plan. He laughs bitterly. It was a horrible plan. It made us both miserable and solved nothing. Every time I criticized your work, I was really just trying to convince myself I didn't care. But I did care. I cared so much it was destroying me. We stand in silence for a moment, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. Then I do something I've wanted to do since reading that letter. I close the distance between us and slap him across the face. Not hard enough to really hurt, but enough to make a point. Enough to release some of the anger I've been carrying. Caden's head snaps to the side and he brings his hand up to his reddening cheek. He looks shocked but doesn't move away. That's for college, I say. Then I step forward and wrap my arms around him, pulling him into a tight embrace. He freezes for a second, then his arms come up around me, holding on like I might disappear if he lets go. And this is for being honest, I whisper against his shoulder. I feel his body shake, and I realize he's crying. Silently, desperately, years of suppressed emotion finally breaking through. I hold him tighter and let myself cry too. For the friendship we lost. For the time we wasted. For all the pain we could have avoided if either of us had been braver. We sink down to the floor together, still holding each other. The expensive hardwood is cold against my knees, but I don't care. Caden's face is pressed into my neck, and I can feel his tears dampening my shirt. I'm sorry, he keeps saying between sobs. I'm so sorry, Eli. I know, I tell him. I know you are. Eventually, the tears slow. We stay on the floor leaning against each other, emotionally exhausted but somehow lighter. Like something that's been weighing us both down for years has finally been lifted. Caden pulls back slightly, wiping his face with the heel of his hand. I must look pathetic right now. You look human. I correct him. For the first time since I've known you, you actually look human. He gives me a watery smile. I've forgotten how to be human. Spent too long being Roger Pierce's son, then Roger Pierce's successor. I reach up and cup his face, forcing him to meet my eyes. Listen to me very carefully. If you ever lie to me again, if you ever shut me out like that again, I will walk away and never look back. Understood? Understood, he says immediately. And if you ever fire me again from a job or from your life, I'll make sure you regret it. Fair enough. His hand comes up to cover mine, still pressed against his cheek. Does this mean you're willing to try? To give us a chance? I think about the letter. About Helena's words at the cafe. About the broken man sitting in front of me who's finally stopped running. I don't forgive you yet, I say honestly. That's going to take time. But I'm willing to see where this goes. That's more than I deserve. Definitely more than you deserve. I agree. But maybe it's what we both need. 3 months later, my life looks completely different. I'm not back at Pierce Industries, at least not in the main building. Instead, I'm heading the newly formed innovation division in the company's sister branch across town. My own team, my own office with actual windows, and most importantly, complete operational independence from Caden's direct oversight. It was his idea. Actually, the night we finally talked everything through, we stayed up until dawn discussing how to move forward. Both of us wanted to try a real relationship, but we also knew the complications. Office politics, power dynamics, the potential for accusations of favoritism. It was a minefield. What if you worked somewhere else in the company? Caden had suggested around 4 in the morning, both of us exhausted but wired on coffee and emotion. Somewhere you'd have complete autonomy, report directly to the board instead of to me. That way, our professional and personal lives stay separate. At first I'd been skeptical. It sounded too convenient, too much like he was trying to control the situation. But then he showed me the actual proposal. A new division focused on sustainable business practices and innovation, with a budget that made my eyes widen and a team I'd get to build from scratch. This isn't charity, he'd insisted. We've been talking about creating this division for 2 years. The board just needed someone qualified to run it. You have the credentials, the vision, and the drive. This is legitimate. So here I am, 3 months in, and it's the best job I've ever had. My team is small but brilliant. 5 analysts I personally recruited, each one bringing unique expertise. We're developing strategies to reduce the company's carbon footprint while maintaining profitability, and the early results are promising enough that other divisions are taking notice. Today is significant though. Today is my first board meeting where I'll be presenting our quarterly results. And Caden will be there as CEO, sitting across the table from me in a professional capacity for the first time since everything changed. I arrive at the main building 15 minutes early, straightening my tie in the lobby bathroom. Helena texted me this morning. A simple "good luck today, sweetheart," with a heart emoji. She's been surprisingly supportive of our relationship, often inviting me to family dinners and treating me like I've always been part of their lives. The boardroom is on the 23rd floor, all glass walls and imposing furniture. I'm the last to arrive and everyone is already seated. Caden is at the head of the table in a charcoal suit, looking every bit the powerful executive. Our eyes meet briefly and something warm flashes in his expression before he smooths it into professional neutrality. "Mr. Morgan," he greets me formally. "Please have a seat." I take the chair directly across from him and set up my presentation materials. The other board members, 9 total, mixture of old guard and new blood, watch with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. The presentation goes smoothly. I walk them through our initiatives, the cost-benefit analyses, the projected long-term savings, and the positive PR implications. I've practiced this for weeks, and it shows. My delivery is confident, my data is solid, and I can see several board members nodding along. Then Malcolm Hayes speaks up. He's one of the old guard, been with the company since Roger Pierce's time. He's in his 60s, traditional in every sense of the word. Very impressive numbers, Mr. Morgan, he says, his tone dripping with false pleasantness. Though I have to wonder if your success has less to do with your actual qualifications and more to do with your special relationship with our CEO. The room goes dead silent. I see Caden's jaw clench, but I catch his eye and give the tiniest shake of my head. This is my battle to fight. I close my presentation folder and look directly at Malcolm. Mr. Hayes, I appreciate your concern about nepotism. So let me address it directly. I hold an MBA from Stanford with a focus on sustainable business practices. I have 6 years of experience in corporate strategy. The innovation division I'm currently heading has reduced operational costs by 12%, while simultaneously improving our sustainability metrics numbers that your division, if I recall correctly, hasn't matched in 3 years. Malcolm's face reddens, but I'm not done. Furthermore, every member of my team was selected through a blind recruitment process overseen by HR, not by me or by Mr. Pierce. Our projects are audited quarterly by an independent consulting firm, and if you'd like to challenge any aspect of my presentation or qualifications, I encourage you to do so with specifics rather than vague insinuations. Professional criticism I can work with. Cheap shots I won't tolerate. The silence stretches for a long moment. Then Jennifer Chen, one of the younger board members, starts a slow clap. Others join in. Malcolm looks furious but says nothing more. After the meeting ends, I pack up my materials quickly, wanting to leave before anyone can corner me for awkward conversations. But as I'm heading to the elevator, Caden catches up with me in the hallway. That was incredible, he says quietly, glancing around to make sure we're alone. The way you handled Malcolm was necessary, I finish. People are going to talk. We knew that going in. I just need them to know I won't be pushed around. He smiles, genuine and proud. My father would have hated you. Good. We stand there for a moment, the space between us charged with everything we can't say in this professional setting. Then Caden's phone buzzes, and he glances at it with a grimace. Another meeting. But dinner tonight? Your place? I'll cook, I agree. Something that isn't takeout for once. His smile widens. Deal. That evening I'm in my kitchen attempting to make pasta from scratch when I hear my apartment door unlock. Caden has a key now. We exchanged them last month after he'd spent 3 consecutive nights at my place and kept having to wait in the hallway while I got home from work. Something smells amazing, he calls out, and I hear him setting down his briefcase in the entryway. Don't get too excited. It's experimental. He appears in the kitchen doorway, having shed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves. Without a word, he crosses to me and wraps his arms around my waist from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. Tired? I ask, stirring the sauce. Exhausted. Board meetings always drain me, though watching you put Malcolm in his place was the highlight of my month. I lean back against him, comfortable in this domesticity we've built. He's not going to be the last person to question us. Let them question. We know the truth. His arms tighten slightly. Speaking of truth, there's something I want to ask you. Something in his tone makes my heart rate pick up. What is it? He releases me and steps back. When I turn around, he's pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. My breath catches. Before you panic, he says quickly, this isn't an engagement ring. We're not there yet, and I know that. But I wanted to give you something that represents what we are to each other. He opens the box. Inside is a simple silver band with both our initials engraved on the inside, EMNCP. It's a promise, Caden continues, his voice soft but steady. A promise that I'm done running, that I'm committed to building something real with you, whatever that looks like. No more hiding, no more letting fear make my decisions, just us, figuring it out together. My throat tightens with emotion. You're really terrible at timing, you know that? I'm covered in flour and tomato sauce. He laughs. Should I wait until... No, I interrupt, holding out my left hand. Put it on now. He slides the ring onto my finger. It fits perfectly, like it was made specifically for me, which, knowing Caden, it probably was. How long have you been planning this? I ask, admiring how the silver catches the kitchen light. Since about 2 weeks after we got back together, I wanted to wait for the right moment. But then I realized there is no perfect moment. There's just now and us. In this life we're building. I pull him close and kiss him, tasting coffee and something sweet he must have eaten earlier. When we break apart, I rest my forehead against his. I love you, I say. Simple words, but ones we're still learning to say easily. Even when you drive me crazy. I love you too, he replies. Especially when you put board members in their place. We stay like that for a moment, just breathing together. Then the timer for the pasta goes off. And we both laugh. Over dinner we talk about our days. About upcoming projects, about Helena's latest attempts to set us up with couple friends she thinks we'd like. It's mundane and ordinary and perfect. Later we're on my tiny balcony, looking out at the city lights. Caden has his arms around me, and I'm wearing his hoodie because the night turned cold. Do you ever think about how we got here, I ask? How you firing me actually led to this? All the time, he admits. It was the worst decision that somehow led to the best outcome. I don't recommend the method, but I can't regret where we ended up. I turn in his arms to face him. Promise me something. Anything. Promise that if things get hard, if we hit obstacles, you won't shut me out again. We face it together or not at all. Together, he agrees immediately. Always together. And standing there on my balcony, wearing a promise ring and held by someone who finally stopped running from what we could be, I believe him. We've both made mistakes. We've both caused each other pain. But we've also found our way back to each other. Stronger and more honest than before. Caden Pierce was my cold boss. My biggest regret. My source of deepest hurt. But now he's something else entirely. My partner, my home, my future. And I, Eli Morgan, am exactly where I'm supposed to be. Finally,